Today I'm comparing every 100th Naruto episode to every 100th One Piece episode. A couple months back I did a video watching every 100th Naruto episode with no context. That video was really well received and I thought, why not just compare those episodes to every 100th One Piece episode? And that's what we're doing. So how this is gonna work is I'm gonna rate them on two different scales. They're gonna have a head-to-head matchup like episode 100 of Naruto versus episode 100 of One Piece. The winner will be picked out of those. And then we'll also be giving each episode its own rating out of 10, and we'll add those up at the end to see which has a better overall rating for every 100th episode. So let's get it started, but quickly, if you want to like the video for Bald Sanji, please do that. This is kind of cursed though, isn't it? Okay, let's start with One Piece, and we're going in numerical order, so we have episode number 1. For both series, the first episode is the very start of these huge, long stories, so they're very important, and one thing I'm going to take into accountability is how much I get sucked into the story right away with this first episode. Now with One Piece, we don't actually see the main character Luffy until about 8 minutes into the episode. The very start is him in the barrel and they find him in the ocean, and then they're just kind of rolling around the barrel for a bit. We get introduced to Alvida, Nami, Kobe, and it kind of builds up to this moment where he pops out of the barrel, and that's where we meet the main character. The rest of the episode doesn't have a ton of action. It's mainly Luffy and Kobe talking to each other in the ship, but at the very end, we do get the first fight, and that is Luffy versus Alvida. And it gives us a little sneak peek at Luffy's powers. We see the Gum Gum power with his Gum Gum pistol ability, and I think it's an interesting first episode. It does get me hooked into it a little bit, but I do remember when I first started One Piece, it really took me until like episode 30 to really start enjoying the series and get locked in. So that's episode 1 of One Piece. Let's quickly talk about episode 1 of Naruto. Unlike One Piece, we're introduced to the main character Naruto right away. There is that little quick backstory of the nine-tailed fox, but right around the 2-minute mark, we see Naruto, so he is there right away, unlike One Piece with kind of making you wait to see Luffy. Similar to the first episode of One Piece, this is just kind of introducing you to everybody. We see Naruto in the school with his instructors, and unlike One Piece though, where we see Luffy's abilities, we don't really get to see Naruto's abilities in this episode because he's still kind of learning. He doesn't really have his jujutsu learned. However, this episode does have a really interesting story. We get to see one of his instructors kind of turn on everybody in the village and try to frame Naruto for stealing this like ancient scroll. By the way, I still have no context other than the 100 episodes I watched, so I'm trying my best here. And by the end of this episode, Naruto does show he learned a shadow clone jutsu technique. I believe I said this in my other video watching these episodes. The first episode was my favorite. This one is honestly a really enjoyable episode. It really made me want to continue watching. Unlike One Piece, where I wasn't really that into the story right away, and it took me a bit, like I said, it took me until like episode 30 to really want to just continue watching. So I'm going to give Naruto the slight edge in this head-to-head matchup and say episode 1 of Naruto is better than episode 1 of One Piece. And I'm going to give Naruto episode 1 kind of a high rating. I'm going to give it a 9.1 out of 10, while One Piece I'll give an 8.5. Now it's time to jump ahead to episode 100 of each series, and I will say for both of these episodes, neither one of them are that special in particular. This One Piece episode, the Straw Hats are in the middle of the desert of Alabasta, and they're just kind of walking around. These episodes were always kind of boring looking back on them. This one in particular, Vivi tells her backstory to Nami, and it's about her childhood growing up with Koza, the leader of the rebellion army in Alabasta. So we learn about their friendship as kids. We even see Koza defend Vivi at one point when some sand bandits try to kidnap her. Out of all One Piece episodes, this one is definitely on more of the boring side, but I will say it's still interesting to me, especially if you like Vivi and her character, getting to learn about her backstory. However, it might still beat out Naruto, because the Naruto 100th episode is nothing special either. This one is the Rock Lee backstory with him training with his trainer who looks just like him but isn't related to him, I believe. But there is a little cool thing with the trainer and Kakashi in this episode, so that does bump it up a little bit. And maybe if I'd watched all of Naruto and I had more of a connection to Rock Lee, I would enjoy this episode more like I do One Piece, because I have that connection with Vivi's character. But this one I really just wasn't interested in because I didn't know any of these characters, so none of the backstory really resonated with me at all. It is interesting though, right, that both 100th episodes are backstories of non-main characters. Like, what are the odds of that? But anyways, I think I'm gonna give One Piece the slight edge in this one and say that episode 100 of One Piece is better than episode 100 of Naruto, but neither one of them are gonna get great ratings. I think One Piece I'll give a 7.2 and I'll give Naruto a 6.9. But let's move on to episode 200, and both of these in each story is filler.
Oh my god, bro.
However, sadly for Naruto, it's going up against the best One Piece filler arc. This is the G8 arc on episode 200 of One Piece. This isn't the peak of the G8 arc, but I do enjoy G8 a lot. And in this episode, we get the legendary Condoriano appearance. We see Commander Jonathan, the GOAT, and there is a little bit of action with Sanji blowing up the jail cell. So overall, 200 might be my favorite episode so far out of the 3 in One Piece. However, the Naruto episode is pretty decent too. The entire time throughout this episode, they're looking for these hidden bombs throughout the village. They learn that these bombs are like 40 years old or something. I can't remember the exact year. They managed to track down the dude who placed these bombs that long ago and find out that he was from an enemy village from an old war, and he just never got the call to blow these bombs up. This one was cool because we got introduced to one of the Hokage, as well as some other side characters that are Naruto's friends that we just hadn't seen in the first couple episodes. So they're both decent, but I think I have to give the edge to One Piece. The G8 arc is the best filler. If it was any other filler, I'd probably give the edge to Naruto here, but G8 is good. That's my opinion, at least. I'm going to give the edge to Naruto and say episode 200 of Naruto is better. Ratings wise though, I think they're still pretty close. We'll say episode 200 of One Piece is an 8.9, and then episode 200 of Naruto is an 8.2. So that brings us to episode 300 of both the respective series. Immediately off the bat, this one's not looking good for Naruto because episode 300 of One Piece is a banger. It is the Zoro vs Kaku finale. Yeah, Naruto stands no chance against this one, and we're actually in Naruto Shippuden now, episode 100 of Naruto Shippuden, Zoro vs Kaku finale. Great episode, great fight. We get to see Zoro's like 9-sword style for the first time. His demon Asura attack. Luffy versus Lucci is also in this. It's kind of the start of their final battle with each other. This is also the episode where Spondum is like assaulting Robin pretty much. Like that's weird. And ironically enough, I think this is the episode we really get to see Luffy and Frankie build a connection with each other for the first time, because it was at this point Frankie was helping Luffy with Lucci, but then he sends Frankie off to go help Robin. Meanwhile, with Naruto, this episode was decent. I do remember actually enjoying this one while watching it. There's this cool like little mist thing going on. The Uchiha name is mentioned with which I know is a big name in Naruto. There's also other characters here, like Kakashi is in this episode, who I see people glazing him all the time. Rock Lee is still training 200 episodes later. This episode is also filler though, and when matched up against the Zoro vs Kaku finale, it's not going to give you the best chance of winning here. So episode 300 goes to One Piece, and this one is kind of a landslide. I think this One Piece episode is a solid 9.7, and this Naruto episode is better than some of the other ones, so we'll give it an 8.8. Moving on to episode 400 of One Piece and episode 200 of Naruto Shippuden. This one's a pretty even matchup, I think. This One Piece episode is a pretty cool one. We get to meet Rayleigh, the Dark King, the second hand, the vice captain of Goldie Roger, who at this point in the story was still just a huge mystery overall, but not after this episode. This entire episode is spent in Shaki's bar, and Rayleigh's just telling stories of Roger and his time with Roger. It's an enjoyable episode. It gives you a ton of information about Roger that we just hadn't gotten to this point, but there's not a lot of action going on. So if Naruto has some action, maybe it could pass. So speaking about that, episode 200 of Naruto Shippuden is also pretty good. It starts off with Naruto meeting, I think, one of the Hokage. I could be wrong, but this is like the start of the Hokage summit. So Naruto meets one of these guys while he's traveling, and he bows his head to him, which at the time I thought was like not something that happens very often. They say like, Naruto, pick your head up or something like that. So they have this whole conversation. Naruto's kind of like begging him about Sasuke, I believe. So that happens at the start. Then we skip to this meeting of the Hokage. This whole summit thing, they talk about Akatsukis. Like I said, I have no context of any of these things. I hardly even know what the Akatsukis are still, but this gave me a lot of information that I had previously not known, having no context to the story. So it was a good episode for me. Knowing the context of the One Piece one, I want to put it ahead because you learn all this stuff about Goldie Roger, but I think this Naruto one is also very good in its own right. So I'm going to give the slight edge to Naruto here and say that this Naruto episode is better, but not by much. We have an 8.0 for Naruto and a 7.9 for One Piece. So that brings us to episode 500 of One Piece and 300 of Naruto Shippuden. And it's another good matchup in my opinion. This one for One Piece is a Luffy backstory episode, so it's not the greatest by any means, but this one in particular is pretty interesting. Sabo's dad had hired the Blue Jam Pirates to capture Sabo and return him home, as well as capture Luffy and Ace. And we learn about the devious plot of the nobles wanting to burn Gray Terminal. We also meet Sabo's new brother, Starry, one of the most hard to watch characters in the story. I just can't stand this guy. And that's about it. The fire doesn't actually happen in this episode, so there's not a ton of action. You just learn about it pretty much. So this is a matchup that Naruto could steal. And this one is in the midst of the war that the Hokage were kind of talking about in the last episode. Now, I don't think it's an amazing one by any means, but there's a Naruto appearance in one of his cool little fox-looking forms. I don't know much about it or what it is exactly, but there's also some other strong guys like this clam guy who easily defeats all these little ninjas. You got two of the Hokage, the Sand Hokage, and then the little guy that's a lot older. They're taking on this lightning dude. So overall, fun battle. My first like real fight that I get to watch from Naruto. So I enjoyed this one, and I think Naruto's got to take the dub here. Kind of a convincing one too. It's going to be 9.0 for Naruto and an 8.2 for One Piece. Moving on to 600 of One Piece and 400 of Naruto Shippuden. We're pretty much halfway through all of the episodes. One Piece has some pretty good episodes on the 100th mark. This one at 600 is in Punk Hazard. It is one of those episodes where everyone's just kind of spread out the entire time and you're bouncing around, but there is cool stuff happening. Most of the Straw Hats have been captured by Caesar. Smoker in Tashigi's body, and then Tashigi and Smoker's body are also there. Virgo shows up, and also in this episode some big information is dropped. We learn about the kids, and more specifically the drugged candy that Caesar had been feeding these kids to grow them to that size. Really tough stuff, and this is where Nami gets really angry. Another thing that happens is we see the true power of Caesar's devil fruit. We see how strong Caesar's devil fruit is. This dude has such a strong devil fruit power. He can remove the oxygen out of the room. We see him suffocating both Usopp and Nami, and it low-key seems like he's gonna finish him off until Brownbeard, of all people, saves the day. I thought that was pretty funny, and if you're wondering where Zoro's been, he's just being chased by Smiley. Meanwhile, in Naruto, we have another filler episode, and this one is Rock Lee again. I said this in my other video, if it's filler, Rock Lee's gonna be there. He fights some people in the desert. Seems like it's pretty close to the Sand Hokage city. That guy also makes an appearance. I can't remember his name specifically, but I just call him the Sand Hokage. There's not a lot going on. There is like some fighting. I don't know. It's just, it didn't have me entertained at all when I first watched it, and watching it again, still not entertained. So One Piece is going to gain some points back on this one with an 8.8 on their episode, and Naruto 7.8. One Piece also winning the head-to-head matchup. So we get the finale of Naruto Shippuden matched up against episode 700 of One Piece. Starting off with One Piece again, we are towards the end of Dressrosa now, and like I said, every 100th episode of One Piece is pretty solid. This one, Law and Luffy have been fighting Doflamingo for some time now. Doflamingo seems to have the upper hand. He's got Law knocked down. He's got one of his clones fighting Luffy, as well as a controlled Bellamy fighting Luffy. We get to see all the carnage that's being laid down on Dressrosa with the fires and destroyed buildings, the whole bird cage. So not only this cool battle going on, but Doflamingo drops some really good info on the Celestial Dragons, which at this point, we'd really not known much. We learned about them in Sabaody, but we didn't know the specifics. And Doflamingo dropped some heavy info in this episode, particularly about how they tried to kill him, and then they realized they couldn't do that because he has all this information and dirt on them. And then after we learn that, we get a flashback of Law with Doflamingo's crew like 10 years ago, or somewhere around that number. So overall, pretty good episode. But this is the peak last episode of Naruto Shippuden is going up against here, which, if you don't remember, is Naruto's wedding. Now, I feel like I would have enjoyed this episode a lot more if I had the context, right? But I still enjoyed it, and I believe I would have been more emotionally connected to Naruto and this episode. The whole episode is the lead up. Naruto asked his mentor to kind of like be his father figure in the wedding, and then people from all over the Naruto verse showed up for this. We even see, I think, Sasuke make an appearance, not at the wedding, but in spirit, he was there. Part of me wants to like make this a tie, but I believe this Naruto episode is a lot more important than the One Piece one. If this was like the peak end of Luffy versus Doflamingo, maybe it could be a tie or One Piece could win. but I think I'm gonna give Naruto the edge here in the head-to-head and also in the points, with a 9.1 to Naruto and an 8.9 to One Piece. I really like that One Piece episode. With that, we end up on episode 800 of One Piece and episode 1 of Boruto. In my original video, I did not watch episode 1 of Boruto. I went straight to episode 100, but to make the episodes line up evenly, I had to include one more Naruto episode, so I went ahead with Boruto episode 1. Once again, we got a pretty solid One Piece episode. Episode 800 is Luffy versus Cracker. We're already in the middle of the battle because Luffy is in Gear 4. This would be his first time using Gear 4 though, and that takes up most of the episode. At the end though, we see Sanji with the Vinsmoke family, and there's a moment here that I personally really like for Sanji when he stands up for this maid after the Vinsmokes are being really rude to her, and one of them even tries to throw a plate at her. That's when Sanji sticks up for her, and that's a moment for me that I personally really like from Sanji. So overall, I think this episode's really good. But episode 1 of Boruto is overall decent. It's just like an introduction, pretty much. Gives me similar vibes to the first episode of Naruto, but there's not a whole lot going on. There's like a little quarrel between kids in the middle of this episode, but other than that, not a whole lot happens. We do get to see old Naruto at the very end of this, so it's cool. But I think I'm gonna have to give One Piece the edge here. One Piece with an 8.6 and Boruto episode 1 with a 7.9. Moving on to episode 900 of One Piece and episode 100 of Boruto. 900 once again is an episode I personally enjoy. One Piece has a lot of boring episodes, but on the 100th mark, they're all pretty good ones in my opinion. This one is the episode about Otama's red bean soup, which if you've watched One Piece, you know the red bean soup low-key has a pretty big part of the story. For some weird reason, because you got the whole Big Mom thing that happens afterwards. It was Otama's first real meal in years. Now, I will say this is almost the entire episode, so it is a little bit drawn out and boring. However, there is a fight at the end of this episode. It's Luffy and Zoro versus the Batman and the Mountain Goat Man with the Smile Fruits. Weird battle, but I made a short about this one once. It's an interesting one because out of all the battles Luffy's had, this is like one of the very few ones where he doesn't say a single word. Not even like a Gomu Gomu pistol. He doesn't say anything. This is like a turning point for Luffy where he gets more serious about taking down Kaido because he has seen everything that Kaido's done to the country and what he's ruined. He's ruined all the water, all the farmland, everything, and that's what this battle signifies. One Piece has the advantage in this video because I know the context of everything. If I had to watch this with no context, I wouldn't know any of this information with the red bean soup or even with the fight, but that's the name of the game. Maybe I can redo this one day once I have the context to Naruto. However, episode 100 of Boruto is what we're going to talk about now. It really reminds me of a filler episode, but it's not filler. It's just there's not a whole lot going on. We got Boruto here with some friends, and then later in the episode, we do see like this weird bug looking dude who attacks the village, and then after that there's a couple other bug people that end up attacking these other ninjas or shinobi, whatever they're considered. So we're learning about something that's going on. I just don't know exactly what that is, right? Like I said, One Piece has the advantage. I know the context of One Piece. This one I don't really know the context of, but I believe even if I knew, I wouldn't really consider this one a great episode. So One Piece is going to win the head-to-head matchup with an 8.0 compared to a 7.6 for Boruto. That brings us to episode 1000 of One Piece and episode 200 of Boruto. This one is a bit on the boring side out of the One Piece episodes we've seen so far, but it's still pretty cool. And even if I was watching this episode with no context, I think it would be cool because we start off with a fight, the Red Scabbards on the rooftop with Kaido. At this time, they were fighting Jack. Luffy and Zoro come into contact with Queen for the first time. And then about the 13-minute mark of this episode, we get this scene where all the Straw Hats are shown. There's like flashbacks of some of their best moments. We see their bounties. This is like the start of Onigashima, right? This isn't a short scene by any means. This takes about 10-11 minutes of the episode, and that's why I think this episode would be good if I had no context, because I get to see all this, all the crew members, all of some of their best moments. They're just short little snippets, but at least would get some context. So even though overall this episode's kind of boring, for someone with no context, this would be a good episode. And let's compare that to episode 200 of Boruto. This is the first time in Boruto that we see Kawaki. He asks Naruto to train him, and we kind of just skip through some time a little bit. Naruto starts to train Kawaki. We do learn a lot of information in this episode, getting to meet some of these villains that we don't really know their names, but I believe they're called Delta or something, the group overall. So it becomes this training episode. Kawaki and Boruto build more connections with each other. And the very end of this one was also really interesting because we see Naruto's fox appear while he's sleeping, pretty much talk to Kawaki, and it appears that Kawaki kind of becomes Naruto's protector. That's what the nine-tailed fox asks him to do. So overall, two pretty good episodes from each respective series, and I don't really know who to give the edge to. Points wise, they're both going to be kind of low, but I think head to head, I'm going to give it to Boruto, and they're going to be both in the 7s. I think Boruto will just give a 7.5 on the dot, and then One Piece a 7.3. And that brings us to the final matchup of the video. We got 1100 of One Piece versus 293 of Boruto. This is a banger matchup, I'm not gonna lie. Episode 1100 of One Piece is Luffy versus Lucci, the rematch. After seeing them in episode 300, 800 episodes later, Lucci is back against Luffy again. What are the odds of that? Not only that, we have Gear 5 Luffy in this, awakened Lucci in this episode. We learn about Nika from Vegapunk, as well as a bunch of information about devil fruits. The reason they have the punishment of not being able to swim is because they're loathed by Mother Nature. The people who eat the devil fruits are. We see the Seraphim. Now, I wouldn't know what those are if I had no context to this, but even without context, this episode's sick. We got Luffy versus Lucci, but Boruto is also a pretty cool episode. We got a really cool fight with Kawaki and this other dude. I don't remember his name really. Code, maybe? This episode is a roller coaster of emotions. It starts off with Boruto looking like he's dead. Naruto sat over top of him, just kind of grieving almost. And it's like that for the first half of the episode. But then a miracle happens and Boruto is alive again. I was so confused when I first watched this at how he'd come back to life. I'm sure I could figure it out if I had watched the other episodes, of course, but still very interesting. And then we learned that it was Kawaki that actually killed Boruto at first, which really confused me, but now it kind of makes sense to me. If Kawaki was meant to be like Naruto's protector, if Boruto had something that was going to infringe Naruto's safety, Kawaki would have to do what he did. So this episode is really good. We see the end where they meet on this Hokage cliff with all the Hokage on it, Boruto and Kawaki's little face-off moments, and then we kind of get left on cliffhanger. I believe the manga continues of Boruto, but they haven't released any more episodes. So two very good episodes, but I'm a One Piece glazer, guys. I gotta give this to One Piece. We got Lucci versus Luffy, Year 5, Awaken Lucci. That's a banger episode. I'm gonna put this as my highest One Piece episode with a 9.8, and then we'll go ahead and give this Boruto episode, pretty solid episode, a 9.2. This video turned out a lot closer than I thought it would be. In the head-to-head matchups, One Piece won 7 out of the 12 episodes, with Naruto having 5. That's very, very close, and maybe if I had context on Naruto, they could steal a couple episodes. But the points was actually even closer than the head-to-head matchups. Out of the 120 points, 12 episodes each, 10 points that they could be scored out of. One Piece had 101.8 out of 120. That's pretty good, but Naruto's score was 99.1 out of 120. So comparing every 100th episode of Naruto and One Piece, they ended up within a 2 to 3 point difference of each other overall, which was a lot closer than I expected initially doing this video. If you guys enjoyed this, once again, make sure to like the video, please, and I'll see you in the next one.